Hey guys, tonight we're traveling to the coldest permanently inhabited place on Earth, Yakutia, in Russia's far east, where you're about to experience a January morning at -71 degrees Celsius. That's -96 Fahrenheit if you're keeping score. Right now, in the pre-dawn darkness that lasts most of the winter day, you're lying under a mountain of reindeer hides in a small wooden cabin, and the first thing you notice, even before you're fully awake, is the sound. It's a sharp, irregular crack, crack, crack echoing through the walls. That's not firewood splitting. That's the forest outside literally exploding. When sap freezes inside tree trunks at these temperatures, it expands with such violence that 100-year-old larches detonate like rifle shots throughout the night. Welcome to Saka Republic, where nature doesn't just challenge you, it actively tries to kill you with casual, almost bored efficiency. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. I love seeing the global bedtime roll call. Someone in Tokyo starting their morning commute, someone in Texas winding down after dinner, all of us connected through these strange little nighttime stories. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your eyes open in complete darkness. Not the darkness of a city night where streetlights bleed through curtains, but the absolute, suffocating blackness of a Yakutian winter morning at 4 a.m. The sun won't even consider rising for another 5 hours, and when it does, it'll barely clear the horizon. A pale, defeated thing that offers light but almost no warmth. You've learned not to expect much from winter sun here. It's more of a suggestion than an actual presence. The cold has already found you, despite the hides. You can feel it pressing against your nose, the only part of your face exposed to the air. Each breath out creates a tiny cloud of vapor that immediately crystallizes, falling back onto the fur like the world's most depressing snow globe. You've woken to find your own frozen breath coating your pillow before. It's not pleasant, but it's reality at -71. Your cabin is small, maybe 4 meters by 5, built from larch logs chinked with moss and clay. The walls are nearly half a meter thick because anything less would be suicidal. Even so, frost creeps along the interior walls in elaborate fractal patterns, beautiful and menacing. Sometimes you wonder if the frost is trying to communicate something, like those messages people claim to find in tree rings or cloud formations. Mostly, though, it's just water vapor from your breathing, freezing the moment it touches any surface not immediately warmed by the stove. The stove, your lifeline, your god, it squats in the corner, a hulking iron beast that your grandfather installed 40 years ago. The fire inside has burned low. You can tell by the temperature drop, but it hasn't gone out completely. This is critical. Letting a stove go cold at these temperatures isn't just inconvenient. It's potentially fatal. Restarting a fire when your fingers won't bend and your matches might not even ignite in air this frigid becomes a survival challenge that's claimed lives. Historians still argue whether more Yakutian settlers died from starvation or from simply failing to maintain their heat sources during the harshest cold snaps. You force yourself to move. Every fiber of your being screams to stay buried under the hides, but you know that way lies death. Slow, comfortable, hypothermic death. You've heard stories of trappers found in spring, perfectly preserved in their beds, having simply decided that getting up wasn't worth it anymore. The cold makes that choice seem almost reasonable. Throwing off the reindeer hides feels like jumping into Arctic water. The air in the cabin hovers around -10 Celsius, positively balmy compared to outside, but still cold enough that you're shivering within seconds. You're wearing everything you slept in: 2 layers of wool underwear, thick woolen socks, and a cotton undershirt. It's not enough. It's never enough until you're right next to the stove. Your feet hit the wooden floor and the cold shoots up through your legs like an electric shock. You've got 30 seconds, maybe 45, before your extremities start the journey toward frostbite. You shuffle run to the stove, grab the iron poker with hands that are already aching, and thrust it into the coals. A few embers glow deep in the ash. Thank God. Thank the universe. Thank whatever deity watches over freezing idiots in Siberia. You feed the embers carefully. Not too much with too fast, or you'll smother what little heat remains. 3 thin strips of kindling first, positioned to maximize airflow. The wood here is so dry from the cold that it catches almost immediately, and within a minute you've got actual flames. You add larger pieces, building the fire back to life, and gradually, warmth begins to radiate from the iron walls of the stove. Only now do you let yourself fully assess the situation. Your water bucket, sitting near the stove, has a thick layer of ice on top. You'll need to melt that before you can have tea. Your breath is still visible in the cabin air, though the clouds are getting smaller as the temperature climbs. And most importantly, you need to check your food supplies. The cupboard is crude, just a wooden box elevated off the floor to discourage mice. You open it with a sense of dread you've been pushing down since yesterday. Inside, a quarter loaf of dark bread, hard as a brick from freezing, 3 small potatoes similarly frozen, a cup of rendered fat, some coarse salt, and a jar with perhaps 2 tablespoons of precious tea leaves remaining. No meat, no fish, no protein of any kind. This is bad. You've been rationing for a week now, ever since the last fishing expedition through the ice came up empty. The nearby river, the Indajerka, is frozen solid to a depth of 3 meters, and the fish that remain are sluggish, deep, nearly impossible to reach. You tried. You spent 6 hours chipping through ice with an iron bar, your arms screaming, your face masked in frost, only to find the fish had moved elsewhere, probably downstream where underground springs keep small pockets of water liquid even in this hellscape. You need protein. Your body is burning through calories just to maintain its core temperature, maybe 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day in this weather. The bread and potatoes aren't enough. You can already feel yourself getting weaker, slower. Yesterday you dropped the wood axe twice because your grip failed. That's not just cold. That's malnutrition, which means today you hunt rat. Now, before you get all squeamish, understand something. Yakutian rats aren't the garbage-eating urban plague vectors you're imagining. These are Microtus economus, northern voles, technically, about the size of your fist, fur-covered, grain-eating rodents that live in elaborate burrow systems beneath the snow. They're clean. They're plentiful. And most importantly, they're one of the few reliable protein sources available in deep winter when everything else has either migrated south, hibernated, or frozen solid. The Saka people, the indigenous folks who've lived here for thousands of years, have been eating these rodents since long before Russians even knew Siberia existed. There's archaeological evidence of vole bones in cooking pits dating back over 2 millennia. Not exactly glamorous, but survival rarely is. And the stock you can make from their bones, rich, fatty, warming, has kept families alive through winters that would make today's -71 look like a mild autumn chill. Some ethnographers documenting traditional Saka cuisine in the 1920s reported that vole bone broth was considered a delicacy, prized for its ability to restore warmth to someone on the edge of hypothermia. You move to the window, a small pane of actual glass, a luxury your grandfather somehow acquired decades ago. It's covered in frost patterns so thick you can't see through it, so you scrape a small viewing hole with your fingernail. Outside is absolute darkness still, but you know what's out there. Your trapline, a series of snares you set up along known vole runs, positioned near the burrow entrances you located last week. The question is, has anything wandered into them during the night? There's only one way to find out, and it requires doing the one thing every cell in your body rebels against: going outside. You begin the mental preparation. In weather like this, going outside isn't just a matter of opening the door. It's a military operation. You need to layer properly, seal every gap, protect every exposed surface. Because at -71 Celsius, exposed skin doesn't just get cold. It dies. 2 minutes of exposure and you're looking at frostbite. 5 minutes and you're looking at tissue necrosis. Your skin will literally freeze solid, ice crystals forming inside your cells, rupturing them from the inside out. Fun times ahead. But first, you need fuel. You ladle some of the rendered fat into a small pan and warm it on the stove, then tear off a chunk of the frozen bread. Dipping the bread in the melted fat makes it edible, almost pleasant even. The fat coats your throat, provides calories, gives your body something to burn. You eat slowly, methodically, trying to make the meager breakfast last. As you chew, you think about the trap. You'd set it near the south-facing slope, where voles tend to be more active because the snow is slightly less deep. You'd used fermented fish as bait, another precious resource from your summer stores, because voles can smell it even under half a meter of snow. The trap itself is made from braided horsehair, traditional style, because metal snares become brittle as glass at these temperatures and snap when pressure is applied. If you're lucky, if there'll be at least one vole waiting for you. 1 would make soup for today. 2 would be a feast. 3 would mean you could actually build up some reserves, maybe even smoke some meat for later. But luck is a fickle thing in Yakutia. The cold doesn't care about your needs. It simply exists, constant and crushing, indifferent to human suffering in a way that almost feels personal. You finish your bread, drain the melted fat directly from the pan, waste nothing, and stand. The stove is roaring now, the cabin warming to almost 0 degrees. Practically tropical. Time to gear up. Time to step into the frozen hell outside and see if you'll eat today or go to bed even hungrier than you woke. The gearing up process is a ritual you could perform blind. You've done it thousands of times in darkness just like this, and every step matters. Skip 1 layer, leave 1 gap unsealed, and you'll pay for it in frozen flesh. Your grandfather taught you this when you were 8 years old. The cold is patient. It will find every mistake you make. You start with the base layers you're already wearing, 2 sets of wool underwear, already warmed by your body heat and the stove. Wool is critical here. Cotton kills. There's a dark joke among Yakutian trappers. Cotton is God's way of thinning the herd. When cotton gets damp from sweat, and you will sweat even in -71 because physical exertion generates heat, it loses all insulating properties and actually wicks warmth away from your body. Wool, on the other hand, retains about 70% of its insulating ability even when wet. The difference between these 2 fabrics is literally the difference between life and death. Next comes the first layer of fur. A reindeer skin shirt, fur side in, that reaches mid-thigh. The fur is about 3 centimeters thick, dense, and oily. Reindeer hair is hollow, each strand is basically a tiny tube of trapped air, which makes it one of the best natural insulators on the planet. Caribou and reindeer can sleep comfortably on ice at -40 because of this fur. You're borrowing their evolutionary advantage. The shirt weighs maybe 2 kilograms, and the moment you pull it on, you feel the difference. Your body heat starts getting trapped, reflected back instead of radiating away into the cabin's cold air. Then the pants. Also reindeer, also fur side in, tied at the waist with a woven cord. These are bulkier than the shirt, making you waddle slightly when you walk, but mobility is a worthwhile sacrifice when the alternative is losing your legs to frostbite. The pants overlap with the shirt by a good 30 centimeters, creating a seal around your core. No gaps, no exposed skin between garments where cold can sneak in. Your feet get special attention. First, thick wool socks, you have 3 pairs, and today you wear 2 simultaneously. Then the traditional Saka winter boots. Unti. These are magnificent pieces of survival technology that haven't changed design in probably 1,000 years because they simply can't be improved upon. The soles are made from the leg skin of reindeer, the toughest part, with the hair left on but worn facing outward. This provides grip on ice that modern rubber cannot match. The uppers are made from softer reindeer hide, fur side in, and they extend to just below your knee. But here's the critical part. Between the 2 sock layers and the boot, you stuff loose dried grass. A handful in each boot, packed around your foot. This grass, you harvested it last summer, dried it thoroughly, stored it in a sealed container to keep it moisture-free, creates air pockets that provide additional insulation. It's also replaceable. When you return from your trap check, this grass will be damp from sweat. You'll throw it out and use fresh grass next time. Some historians still argue whether this grass stuffing technique originated with the Saka people independently or whether it was borrowed from the Evenki or even peoples who also inhabit the region. But honestly, you don't care about academic debates when your toes are on the line. The boots get tied with leather thongs, wrapped around your calves multiple times and knotted tight. Not so tight that circulation is cut off. That's a rookie mistake that leads to frostbite even with perfect insulation, but tight enough that no cold air can flow down into the boot opening. Now the outer layer. This is a longer reindeer fur coat, doha, that extends almost to your ankles, fur side out this time. This outer layer serves multiple purposes. It's your windbreak, stopping the convective heat loss that occurs when moving through air. It's also your emergency shelter. If you get caught in a storm or fall through ice and need to huddle somewhere, this coat is large enough to wrap completely around your body. It weighs maybe 7 kilograms and makes you look roughly twice your actual size. You look ridiculous. You also look alive, which is more than can be said for the trappers who tried to get by with just enough insulation. The coat has a hood massive, lined with wolf fur around the face opening. Wolf fur has special properties that make it ideal for hood lining. Unlike most furs, wolf hair doesn't accumulate frost from your breath. Something about the hair structure prevents ice crystals from forming on it. Your grandfather explained this once, though the physics were beyond you. All you know is that reindeer fur hoods become crusty with ice after an hour outside, but wolf fur hoods stay relatively clear. This matters because ice buildup adds weight and reduces the hood's effectiveness. Hands are next. First, thin wool gloves. Then over mittens made from, you guessed it, reindeer hide with the fur out. These mittens are oversized, allowing your fingers to move inside, to curl into fists that share warmth. Gloves that separate each finger are death sentences in this weather. Your fingers need to huddle together for warmth like penguins in a blizzard. The mittens have long cuffs that extend halfway up your forearms, overlapping with the coat sleeves and tied off with more leather cord. Face protection is the trickiest part. You have a scarf, heavy wool, knitted by your mother 20 years ago, back when she still lived out here before deciding that Yakutsk city life, even with its still brutal winters, was preferable to this frozen exile. You wrap the scarf around your face multiple times, covering everything from your chin to just below your eyes. Your nose is protected. Your mouth is protected. You'll breathe through the wool, which will warm the air slightly before it hits your lungs, and will also catch the moisture from your exhalations, preventing it from freezing on your face. But your eyes need to stay exposed. You need to see. This is the compromise, the one piece of vulnerability you can't eliminate. At -71, your eyeballs don't freeze. They're protected by body heat and constant fluid movement, but your eyelashes will frost over within minutes. You've learned to blink often to keep them from freezing together. Once, when you were younger and stupider, you let your lashes freeze shut during a blizzard. The panic that sets in when you can't open your eyes in a whiteout is memorable. You had to remove your mitten and use your bare fingers to melt the ice, risking frostbite to your hand. You made it, obviously, but the lesson stuck. Finally, the hat. This goes over the hood. A cylindrical reindeer fur hat with ear flaps that tie under your chin. It looks absurd, like something from a comedy sketch about polar explorers. It also keeps your brain from freezing, so vanity takes a back seat. You're now wearing approximately 15 kilograms of fur, wool, and hide. You look like a furry barrel with legs. Moving is difficult, bending is almost impossible, but you're encased in insulation that can keep you alive for hours in temperatures that would kill an unprotected person in minutes. Before you head to the door, you grab your gear. A walking stick, crucial for testing snow depth and ice stability. A small knife in a sheath on your belt, for dispatching any vole you find quickly and humanely. A canvas bag for carrying your catch. And a birch bark container with hot coals from the stove, wrapped in more insulation, an emergency fire starter, because if something goes catastrophically wrong out there, being able to start a fire could mean survival. You pause at the door, hand on the latch. This is the moment you hesitate every single time, because you know what's on the other side. You've experienced it hundreds of times, and it never gets easier. The cold doesn't care that you're prepared. It doesn't care that you're layered properly. It will still hit you like a physical blow. You take 3 deep breaths through the scarf, filling your lungs, oxygenating your blood. Then you lift the interior latch, just a simple wooden bar that drops into brackets, and pull the door inward. The cold doesn't creep in. It explodes into the cabin like something alive and malicious. The temperature differential is roughly 70 degrees Celsius, and the air itself seems to scream as warm and cold mix violently. Your carefully heated cabin air rushes out in a visible cloud, and the outside cold rushes in to take its place. You step through quickly and pull the door shut behind you, dropping the exterior latch. a duplicate of the interior one, into place. You can't risk the wind blowing it open. Coming back to a frozen cabin would be catastrophic. And now you're outside. The first breath through the scarf feels like inhaling broken glass. Even wrapped in wool, even warmed slightly by the fabric, the air is so cold that it hurts going down. Your lungs constrict instinctively, trying to protect themselves. You force yourself to breathe slowly, shallowly. Deep breaths in this temperature can cause bronchospasm, your airways literally freezing partially shut. There's a quirky detail about extreme cold that most people don't know. At temperatures below -40 or so, you can actually hear your breath freezing. It makes a tiny, crystalline tinkling sound as the water vapor instantly becomes ice and falls. Right now, in -71, that sound is constant. Every exhale creates a small shower of ice crystals that tinkle as they hit the ground. It's almost musical, almost beautiful. It's also a reminder that the moisture leaving your body is freezing before it can fall half a meter. Your eyes are already tearing up, an involuntary response to the cold, and you feel the tears freezing on your cheeks beneath the scarf. You blink rapidly, keeping your lashes from freezing together. The darkness is still absolute. No moon tonight, and the stars, when you tilt your head back, are so bright they look fake, like someone punched holes in a black dome and backlit it with LEDs. The Milky Way is a river of light across the sky. In summer, you can barely see a dozen stars from here. In winter, at these temperatures, the air is so clear, so free of moisture and pollution, that you can see thousands. It's one of the few compensations for living in this frozen hell. You stand still for a moment, letting your body adjust. This is important. Rushing into physical activity in extreme cold is dangerous. Your muscles need time to warm up. Your cardiovascular system needs to adjust to the shocking temperature. You've heard of trappers who charged out into the cold and dropped dead from cardiac arrest within 100 meters. The shock to the system was simply too much. So you wait. 30 seconds. A minute. You shift your weight from foot to foot, flex your fingers inside the mittens, rotate your shoulders. The cold is pressing against you, trying to find weakness, but your layers are holding. You're uncomfortable, but you're not in danger. Yet, you orient yourself. The trap line is roughly 200 meters south-southwest of your cabin, following the tree line where it meets an open area. The voles like the transition zones, not deep in the forest where snow is thin and food scarce, not in the open where predators can spot them, but right at the edge where they get the best of both worlds. 200 meters, about a 10-minute walk in summer. Today, in darkness, in snow that's thigh-deep in places, wearing 15 kilograms of fur, probably 25 minutes, maybe 30. You begin walking, using the stick to probe ahead of each step. The snow crunches beneath your boots with a sound like styrofoam breaking. This is another quirk of extreme cold. Snow changes texture. The crystals become harder, drier, more brittle. It doesn't pack well for snowballs at these temperatures. It just shatters. 20 meters from your cabin, you've already lost sight of it in the darkness. The night has swallowed everything. You're alone in a frozen void, following memorized landmarks you can barely see, hunting rodents to make soup, wearing dead animals to avoid becoming one yourself. Just another morning in Yakutia. The first sensation that strikes you, even through all your layers, is the density of the cold. It's not just cold air. It's thick, viscous, almost solid. Moving through it feels like wading through invisible molasses. Each step forward requires genuine effort, not just because of the deep snow or your heavy clothing, but because the air itself seems to resist your movement. At -71 Celsius, air becomes roughly 15% denser than at 0 degrees. You're essentially moving through a heavier medium, and your lungs are working overtime to extract oxygen from it. Your breath comes in controlled puffs through the wool scarf. With each exhalation, you hear that delicate tinkling sound, your breath crystallizing and falling, and you see a cloud billow out in front of you, illuminated faintly by starlight. The cloud doesn't dissipate like normal breath vapor. It lingers, suspended, before slowly drifting downward as billions of tiny ice crystals. You're literally breathing ice. The darkness is disorienting. You've walked this path dozens of times. But familiarity only helps so much when you can't see 3 meters ahead. Your world shrinks to the small circle around you. The crunch of snow under your boots, the white plume of your frozen breath, the vague shapes of trees rendered as darker patches against the black sky. Everything else is void. You move slowly, deliberately. The walking stick probes ahead, tap, 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 testing the snow depth, checking for hidden obstacles. Last year, a trapper from the next settlement over broke his leg stumbling into a snow-covered ditch in darkness just like this. They found him 2 days later, frozen solid, less than 100 meters from his cabin. He'd probably tried to crawl back, got disoriented, went in circles until exhaustion and hypothermia took him. The cold is patient, your grandfather's voice reminds you. It will wait for you to make a mistake. About 40 meters from the cabin, you pass the woodpile, a massive stack of split larch logs that took you 3 months to prepare last autumn. The pile is completely buried under snow now, but you know it's there. You can see the slight mound, the disruption in the otherwise smooth snow surface. That woodpile represents survival. You calculate unconsciously, at current burn rate, maybe 2 more months of fuel. By then it'll be March, temperatures climbing to a balmy -30 or so, and you can start harvesting more wood. If you make it to March, the thought comes unbidden, unwelcome. You push it away. Negative thinking in extreme cold is dangerous. It's a mental spiral that can lead to giving up, and giving up means death. You've seen it happen, not personally, but you've heard the stories. People who just sat down in the snow and decided they were done. The cold makes it easy. It numbs you, slows your thinking, makes surrender seem reasonable. You focus instead on the immediate task. Left foot, right foot, probe with the stick. Your breath comes rhythmically. Your body is generating heat now from the exertion, and you can feel yourself warming slightly inside the fur cocoon. This is good. This is your body doing what it evolved to do, burning fuel to maintain core temperature. The bread and fat you ate earlier are being converted to movement and heat. 70 meters out now, and you've reached the tree line. The forest here is mostly larch, Larix gmelinii, the only conifer that drops its needles in winter. These trees are the hardiest organisms you know. They survive in permafrost so severe that the ground is frozen solid year-round below about 1/2 meter depth. Their root systems spread horizontally rather than vertically because digging deep is impossible. In summer, they're actually beautiful, soft green needles, delicate cones. In winter, they're skeletal and dead-looking, black claws reaching up toward the stars. Crack. The sound makes you freeze mid-step. About 50 meters to your left, a tree has just exploded from the cold. You've heard this sound your entire life, but it still triggers a primal alert response. Your heart rate spikes. For just a second, your body thinks something is attacking, and adrenaline dumps into your bloodstream. You breathe through it. Just a tree. Just water freezing inside wood and splitting it apart with thousands of pounds of pressure per square inch. Nothing to worry about. Though you've also heard stories, impossible to verify, filed under probably folklore but maybe not, of splinters from exploding trees impaling people who happen to be standing nearby. Wooden shrapnel traveling at high velocity, driven by expanding ice. Whether it's ever actually happened or is just campfire mythology, historians still argue about it. You're not interested in becoming a case study. You angle slightly away from the tree line, giving yourself more buffer space, and continue south-southwest. The landscape here is deceptive in its monotony. Snow, trees, darkness. No landmarks jump out. No convenient signs saying vole traps this way. You navigate by a combination of memory, dead reckoning, and subtle environmental cues you've learned to read. That cluster of 3 larches growing close together, you remember passing that. The slight rise in the terrain here, you know this means you're approaching the drainage area where snowmelt flows in spring. And there, barely visible, a line of willows marking the edge of what becomes a small creek when water is liquid. Your trapline is set along this willow edge. Voles love willows. The bark is edible, for them, not for you, though in desperate times humans have made flour from the inner bark. The root systems create networks of tunnels and chambers where voles can move around beneath the snow, protected from aerial predators and insulated from the worst of the cold. A good willow stand in winter is essentially a vole apartment complex. You slow your pace as you approach the area. You're about 170 meters from the cabin now. You've been counting steps unconsciously, a habit drilled into you since childhood. In whiteout conditions or complete darkness, step counting is sometimes the only way to navigate. You know that 250 of your steps equals roughly 200 meters. Right now you're at about 215 steps. Close. Your eyes have adjusted to the darkness as much as they're going to. The starlight helps barely. You can distinguish shapes now, differentiate between snow-covered ground and the darker silhouettes of vegetation. There, the willow line. You can see the distinctive shape of the bushes, their branches heavy with snow, bending under the weight. You set your first snare about 20 meters into this willow line. It should be there. You probe with your stick carefully. The last thing you want is to trigger your own trap or, worse, step on it and destroy hours of careful setup work. The stick encounters resistance, something beneath the snow that isn't just snow. You crouch, difficult in all these layers, and begin carefully brushing away the powder with your mittened hand. Even through the thick reindeer hide, you can feel how cold the snow is. It's not wet or sticky like snow near freezing. It's dry, granular, almost like sand. It flows around your mitten and immediately refills the depression you're creating. You dig deeper, working quickly because crouching stationary like this is dangerous. Your body isn't generating as much heat, and the cold is pressing in. 20 seconds of digging and your mitten contacts something that isn't snow. The smooth curve of a willow branch. You follow it, brushing away more snow, until you find what you're looking for. The snare. It's a loop of braided horsehair, about 8 centimeters in diameter, suspended over a small tunnel entrance. The tunnel is still there. You can see the dark hollow in the snow where voles have created a runway between their burrow and their feeding areas. The horsehair is frosted but intact. These snares work on simple physics. A vole moves through the tunnel, pokes its head through the loop looking for the bait smell, and the loop tightens around its neck as it struggles. Death comes quickly, usually within seconds. It's not cruel by intent. You're not interested in causing suffering, but you need protein and voles are what's available. You examine the snare carefully. Empty. No vole. The bait is still there. A small chunk of fermented fish, frozen solid now, but still emitting enough scent to be detectable. Or so you hope. At these temperatures, even smell behaves differently. Scent molecules move more slowly through cold air, diffusing less efficiently. What a vole might smell from 10 meters away at negative 10 degrees, it might not detect from 2 meters away at negative 71. Disappointment settles in your gut, but you don't let it grow. You have 7 more snares to check. The odds that all of them are empty is low. Probably low. You hope it's low. You stand. Your knees crack audibly in the cold, and move to the next trap location. This one is about 10 meters farther along the willow line, set at a junction where 2 vole runways intersect. High traffic area in vole terms. If you were going to catch something, this would be a likely spot. The wind picks up slightly, just a breath of movement, but you feel it immediately. Wind is the enemy in extreme cold. Still air at negative 71 is survivable with proper gear. Moving air at negative 71 creates wind chill that can drop the effective temperature to negative 90 or below. At those temperatures, exposed skin freezes in under 60 seconds. Even through your layers, you feel the difference. The cold finds the tiny gaps in your clothing, the space between mitten and sleeve, the opening around your eyes, and drives in like needles. You turn your back to the wind and wait for it to pass. Just a gust. 10 seconds. 15. Then it dies down again, and the night returns to its previous stillness. In the silence, you can hear your heartbeat thudding in your ears, your blood rushing, your body working frantically to maintain core temperature. The second snare appears as you brush away snow. This one is positioned differently, horizontal rather than vertical, designed to catch voles moving along the ground rather than through raised tunnels. You pull it up gently, checking for tension. There's weight. Your heart jumps. Something is in the snare. You pull more firmly, drawing the horsehair loop up through the snow, and there, yes, a vole. Frozen solid, its small body rigid, but definitely real. You've caught something. The relief is physical. Your shoulders relax fractionally. Your breathing steadies. You're going to eat today. The vole is small, maybe 60 grams, but it's protein. It's fat. It's the raw material for soup stock that will warm you from the inside and provide calories your body desperately needs. You work the snare loose from the vole's neck. The horsehair is stiff with cold. And place the small frozen body into your canvas bag. One down. You reset the snare quickly, your fingers clumsy in the oversized mittens, and move on. The third snare is empty. The fourth is empty. But the fifth, another catch. This one is slightly larger, maybe 75 grams. 2 voles. That's a decent haul. That's soup for today and maybe tomorrow if you're careful. You check the remaining snares methodically. 6th, empty. 7th, empty. 8th, jackpot. Not 1 but 2 voles had gotten tangled in the same snare, probably drawn by the bait simultaneously. They're frozen together now, a small cluster of fur and tiny limbs. You work them free carefully and add them to your bag. For voles total, you stand there in the darkness, the bag hanging from your hand, and allow yourself a moment of genuine gratitude. For voles, maybe 250 grams of meat total, plus the bones for stock. You'll make it another few days. The protein will stop the weakness, restore some energy. You'll have the mental clarity to plan, to think beyond just the next meal. The cold hasn't won today. You reset all the snares, replacing bait where necessary, and begin the journey back to the cabin. The return trip is always faster because you're following your own tracks, dark depressions in the snow visible even in starlight. You move quickly but not recklessly, the bag with your catch bumping against your leg with each step. About halfway back, you pause and look up at the sky. The stars are overwhelming, thousands of them, millions maybe, a vast tapestry of light that makes you feel simultaneously insignificant and connected to something larger. Somewhere up there, photons that left distant stars thousands of years ago are just now reaching your eyes. Ancient light, traveling across incomprehensible distances, to illuminate your tiny struggle for survival in the Siberian darkness. It's almost enough to make you philosophical. Almost. But your feet are starting to go numb despite the boots and grass insulation, which means you've been out here too long. Philosophy can wait. Warmth cannot. You hurry the last 100 meters, your breath coming faster, ice crystals showering down with each exhalation. The cabin appears gradually. First just a darker rectangular shadow, then resolving into actual walls, actual structure. You've never been so happy to see plywood and chinked logs in your life. The door opens. You stumble inside, pulling it shut quickly behind you. The relative warmth of the cabin, still below freezing, but 60 degrees warmer than outside, hits you like a wave. You lean against the door, just breathing, letting your body adjust. You made it. You hunted. You survived. Now comes the good part. Cooking. The art of reading Yakutia's landscape for signs of prey isn't something you learn from books. It's knowledge passed down through generations, earned through countless hours of observation, refined through the brutal feedback of success and starvation. Your grandfather taught you, and his grandfather taught him, in an unbroken chain of survival wisdom stretching back centuries before Russians ever showed up with their maps and their certainty that they understood this place. They didn't. Most still don't. You shed the outer layers of fur carefully, hanging the Doha coat on its peg near the door where it won't be in direct heat from the stove. Rapid temperature changes can damage the hide, crack it, reduce its effectiveness. The reindeer gave its life for this coat, or rather, gave its life for food, and the coat was a byproduct, but still, you owe it proper care. The coat will last decades if treated well, or fail in a single season if abused. There's no running to a store for a replacement out here. The inner fur shirt comes off next, then the pants until you're down to your wool base layers again. Your face is numb where it was exposed around the eyes. You touch your cheeks gently. They're cold but not frozen, still pliable. No frostbite. You've been lucky or careful or both. The line between the two blurs out here. The canvas bag sits on the floor where you dropped it, for frozen vole bodies inside. You'll deal with them shortly, but first you need to restore your own core temperature. The stove is still burning. You fed it well before leaving, and you position yourself close to it, hands extended toward the iron sides, letting the heat seep back into your fingers. Feeling returns gradually, and with it comes pain. Your fingertips throb as blood flow increases. Your toes ache inside the boots. This is normal, expected, and actually a good sign. It means you haven't frozen anything seriously. It's when you don't feel pain that you worry, because that means the tissue is too damaged to send pain signals anymore. While you warm up, your mind drifts back to the trapline, to the signs you read out there in the darkness. Most people think winter wilderness is dead, empty, devoid of information. They're wrong. The snow is a book if you know how to read it. Take the vole runways you found. Those weren't random. Voles create highways beneath and through the snow, connecting burrow entrances to feeding sites, to other burrows, following routes that maximize safety and minimize energy expenditure. From the surface, these highways are nearly invisible, just slight depressions in the snow, sometimes not even that. But if you know what you're looking for, you can spot them. The key is understanding how snow settles. Fresh snow falls uniformly, but over time it consolidates differently depending on what's beneath it. Snow over solid ground compacts more than snow over hollow spaces. So a vole runway, essentially a tunnel system, creates a subtle linear depression as the snow above it settles less than the surrounding snow. In daylight, experienced trappers can spot these from 20 meters away. In darkness, you need to crouch low, look for variations in the snow surface height, rely on memory of where tunnels were last season. Because here's the thing, voles are creatures of habit. They'll use the same runway systems year after year, generation after generation, as long as the food sources remain consistent. That willow line you checked tonight, your grandfather checked the same line 40 years ago. Probably his grandfather before him. The voles don't know they're following tradition. They just know these routes work, connect food to shelter, and haven't gotten them killed yet. There's a scholarly debate among wildlife biologists about whether small mammal tunnel systems in permafrost regions represent learned behavior or instinct. Do young voles learn the routes from their parents? Or are they genetically programmed to create tunnels in optimal locations? The data is inconclusive, complicated by the difficulty of studying behavior in such extreme environments. You've never cared much about the academic question. You just know the tunnels appear in predictable places, and that predictability keeps you alive. Beyond the runways themselves, there are other signs. Vole scat, tiny pellets, elongated, dark against the snow. They defecate in specific areas away from their main tunnels, creating what amount to rodent latrines. Finding fresh scat tells you a runway is active, currently in use, worth setting a snare on. Old scat, frozen and degraded, suggests an abandoned route. Then there's the vegetation. Voles eat constantly. Their metabolism is absurdly high, burning through calories just to stay warm in winter. They'll gnaw bark from willow stems, chew through roots they encounter while digging, consume any seeds or dried plant matter accessible in their tunnel systems. You can spot active vole areas by looking for freshly gnawed willow bark. The exposed wood underneath is pale, almost white, and stands out against the darker outer bark. Gnaw marks more than a few weeks old darken as the wood oxidizes, becoming less visible. Your grandfather taught you to look at the patterns of gnawing too. Voles have a distinctive chew pattern, small, neat marks from their incisors, usually at a slight angle. Rabbits and hares, by contrast, leave broader marks with a different angle. Being able to distinguish between them matters because it tells you what species you're dealing with, which informs trap placement and bait selection. Voles respond well to fish bait. Hares don't care about fish at all. The temperature of the snow itself provides information. Voles generate body heat, and active burrow systems are warmer than the surrounding permafrost. Not by much, maybe 1 or 2 degrees Celsius, but enough to affect snow quality directly above the burrow entrance. The snow there is often slightly softer, more granular, because it's undergone more freeze-thaw cycles than snow over frozen ground. You can feel this with your hands if you know what you're checking for. Press down on the snow over an active burrow and it compresses differently than snow over solid earth. Wind patterns matter too, though tonight there was barely any wind to speak of. In general, voles prefer areas with some wind protection. They'll build burrow entrances on the leeward side of willow clumps, behind terrain features that block prevailing winds, in small depressions that collect drifted snow for extra insulation. Understanding the dominant wind direction in your area, which in Yakutia generally blows from the northwest, helps you predict where vole activity will concentrate. The one sign you hoped not to find but always check for: predator tracks. Foxes, ermines, even owls in less severe cold will hunt voles. Finding predator tracks near your trapline is bad news for multiple reasons. First, it means competition for the same food source. Second, predators will sometimes steal from traps, taking your catch before you can retrieve it. Third, heavy predator activity can push voles deeper into their burrows, making them less likely to venture into snares. Tonight you saw no predator tracks. At -71, even the hardiest predators are hunkered down, conserving energy, waiting for more forgiving weather. This is one small advantage of extreme cold: reduced competition. The downside, of course, is that you're also barely surviving. It's a trade-off. You flex your fingers experimentally. Feeling has returned, the throbbing pain fading to a dull ache. Time to process your catch. The 4 voles lie on the table now, removed from the bag, still frozen solid. They look peaceful in death, their small faces almost serene, eyes closed, tiny paws curled against their chests. You feel the usual complicated mix of gratitude and guilt. They died so you could eat. It's the oldest transaction in nature, predator and prey, but knowing that doesn't make it emotionally simple. Still, sentiment doesn't fill your stomach. You pick up the first vole and examine it closely. This is part of the tracking skill too, reading the animal itself for information about the larger population. This one is an adult, probably male based on size, in good condition despite the season. Its fur is thick, healthy looking, no bare patches or signs of disease. The body has decent fat reserves. You can tell by the slight roundness of the belly, the way the skin moves over the ribcage. This suggests the vole population is doing well, finding enough food to maintain weight even in deep winter. Good news for you. It means the population is sustainable, that you can continue trapping at current rates without depleting the resource. A starving vole population, thin animals, poor fur quality, would be a warning sign that you're overharvesting or that environmental conditions are degrading the food supply. You check the teeth next, pulling back the lips with your fingernail. The incisors are bright orange, healthy. Vole teeth grow continuously throughout their lives, and the color indicates good nutrition, adequate mineral intake. Pale or white incisors would suggest malnutrition. Broken or worn teeth would indicate an older animal, possibly past its prime. The other 3 voles get the same examination. All healthy, all well-fed, all probably less than a year old, which is about the maximum lifespan for voles in the wild anyway. They lived, they reproduced. You can tell 2 of them are females by examining their underside, and now they'll become soup. Circle of Life, Yakutian edition. Processing them requires care and a sharp knife. You have both. The knife is carbon steel, honed to an edge that could shave hair, kept meticulously clean and dry to prevent rust. Your grandfather's knife, actually, passed down when he died 5 years ago. The handle is carved birch, worn smooth by decades of use, fitted perfectly to his hand and now to yours. You work over a wooden board, making quick, precise cuts. The voles are still frozen, which makes some aspects easier: less blood, firmer tissue, and some harder. The meat doesn't separate from bone as cleanly. You skin each one first, peeling the fur back carefully. Vole pelts aren't valuable like fox or sable, but you save them anyway. Enough small pelts can be stitched together for mittens or hat linings. Waste nothing. The skin bodies are disturbingly small, pink and white and vulnerable looking. You section them quickly. Head, body cavity, limbs. The heads and feet go into one pile. These will make the stock, bones boiled for hours until they release every molecule of collagen and fat. The body meat goes into another pile. This you'll add to the soup later, once the stock is rich and ready. Internal organs get examined out of habit. The liver should be dark red, firm. It is. The intestines should be, well, full of partially digested plant matter. They are. Everything looks normal. No signs of disease, no parasites visible to the naked eye. Not that you'd reject the meat if you found something, you're hungry and cooking kills most pathogens, but it's good to know your food source is healthy. The whole processing takes maybe 20 minutes. For voles reduced to component parts. Pile of bones and heads for stock, pile of sectioned meat, pile of tiny pelts, pile of organs and scraps. The organs will go into the soup too, eventually. Even vole liver has protein and iron, and you're not in a position to be picky. You scrape the cutting board clean and wash your hands in a bowl of melted snow water. Precious stuff requiring fuel to melt, but hygiene matters. Infections in extreme cold are deadly. A small cut that gets infected can progress to sepsis before you could reach medical help, which is several days' journey away even in good conditions. Now comes the actual cooking, the transformation of dead rodents into life-sustaining food. You fill your largest pot, cast iron, heavy, another grandfather inheritance, with clean snow from the supply you keep in a sealed container inside the cabin. This snow is pre-screened, free of debris and contamination. You learned early never to just scoop random snow from outside. Animal urine, bird droppings, wind-blown dirt. All of it invisible in white snow, all of it potentially harmful. The pot goes onto the stove. The snow begins melting immediately, the solid white mass slumping into liquid. You add the vole bones, heads, and feet, the foundation of stock. The water level rises as more snow melts, eventually covering the bones completely. And now you wait. Good stock can't be rushed. The bones need hours at a low simmer to break down the collagen into gelatin, to release the minerals locked in the bone matrix, to create the rich, unctuous liquid that will form the base of your soup. While the stock begins its slow extraction, you allow yourself to relax slightly. You've succeeded in the hunt. You have food. The immediate crisis is managed. These small victories are how you measure life out here. Not in grand achievements, but in daily survival, in staying alive one more day, in keeping the cold at bay a little longer. Outside, the darkness continues. Inside, the stove radiates heat, the pot simmers, and the smell of cooking vole, earthy, slightly gamey, surprisingly pleasant, begins to fill the cabin. You're going to make it through today. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, but that's tomorrow's problem. For now, you're warm, you're safe, and you're about to eat. In Yakutia, that counts as a very good day. The trap-setting ritual is a meditation in survival, each movement deliberate, each choice weighted with consequence. You learn the hard way, literally through frozen fingers and empty snares, that rushing this process leads to failure. The voles don't care about your urgency. The cold certainly doesn't. So you force yourself into the proper mindset. Slow, methodical, attentive to detail. But that was earlier, during your pre-dawn excursion. Now, with the stock pot simmering and your body finally warming, you find yourself reflecting on the actual mechanics of trap setting in conditions that want you dead. It's worth understanding, because the difference between a well-set snare and a poorly set one is often the difference between eating and starving. The horsehair snares you use are traditional technology, unchanged for centuries because nothing modern improves on them in extreme cold. You tried wire snares once, bought them from a trader passing through, seduced by promises of superior strength and reliability. Within 2 days of use at -40, every single wire snare had snapped. The metal became brittle, lost its flexibility, and fractured under stress that horsehair handled easily. Horsehair is organic, flexible, and remarkably strong for its weight. A properly braided horsehair snare, you make yours with strands from at least 6 different hairs, twisted together in a specific pattern your grandfather taught you, can support the weight of a thrashing vole without breaking and remains pliable even at temperatures approaching -80. The horses these hairs come from are long dead now. You've been recycling the same hair stock for years, but the material endures. Making the actual snare is an art. You start with tail hairs, which are coarser and stronger than mane hairs. You select 6 strands of roughly equal length and thickness, then braid them together using a 3/3 pattern that distributes tension evenly. The braiding takes about 20 minutes per snare, usually done in summer when your fingers have full dexterity. You make extras. You currently have 14 snares total, 8 deployed and 6 in reserve, because losing snares to weather or animals is inevitable. The loop itself needs to be precisely sized. Too small and the vole's head won't fit through. Too large and the vole can pull back out before the snare tightens. 8 centimeters in diameter is optimal for the vole species in your area. You create the loop using a small slip knot that tightens under pressure but won't loosen once triggered. The knot design is critical. There are maybe a dozen different knot types that could theoretically work, but only 2 or 3 that remain functional in extreme cold when the horsehair is stiff and your fingers are too numb for fine adjustments. Positioning the snare requires reading the vole runway carefully. You want the loop suspended in the tunnel at exactly nose height for a moving vole. Too high and they pass under it. Too low and it catches their body instead of their neck, allowing them to struggle free. Nose height for a Yakutian vole is roughly 4 to 5 centimeters above the tunnel floor. You achieve this by using small willow twigs as supports. The snare loop gets attached to a longer piece of horsehair, the anchor line, which ties off to a sturdy willow branch above the tunnel. The anchor line runs down through the snow, and you use the small twigs to prop the loop at the correct height, creating a stable position. The whole setup needs to be rigid enough that it doesn't shift when wind or falling snow disturbs it, but flexible enough that it doesn't freeze into uselessness. Here's where things get tricky. Bait placement. You want the bait position just beyond the snare, so the vole has to put its head through the loop to reach the food. The bait you use, fermented fish, is another piece of traditional technology that sounds disgusting but works brilliantly. The fish are corriganous, a whitefish species that runs in the local rivers during late autumn. You catch as many as possible before freeze up, then pack them in wooden barrels with salt and allow them to ferment slightly. The fermentation process sounds counterintuitive. Why partially rot perfectly good fish? But it serves 2 purposes. First, fermentation breaks down some of the fish proteins into smaller, more volatile compounds that smell stronger and carry farther through cold air. Second, the fermentation produces natural alcohols and acids that act as preservatives, preventing the fish from completely decomposing over the winter. The result is fish that smells absolutely horrific to human noses but apparently irresistible to voles. You've tested this. Fresh fish as bait catches maybe 1 in 5 attempts. Fermented fish catches 3 in 5. The data is unambiguous. Historians still argue whether the fermented fish technique originated with the Saka people or was borrowed from the Evenki or other indigenous groups in the region. Anthropological evidence suggests similar fermentation techniques across multiple Siberian cultures, possibly indicating independent development or extremely ancient knowledge sharing. You don't know and don't particularly care. It works. That's sufficient. You secure the bait, a piece about the size of your thumbnail, using a small wooden skewer pushed into the snow just beyond the snare loop. The bait freezes solid within seconds of exposure to air, which is actually helpful. Frozen bait doesn't get dragged away by the first opportunistic vole that finds it. They have to work at it, gnawing and licking, which keeps them in position long enough for the snare to do its job. The final step is disguising your presence. Voles are wary creatures. They can smell human scent, and while they're not as sensitive as, say, deer or rabbits, they'll still avoid an area that reeks of predator. You minimize this by handling everything with gloves and by spending as little time as possible at each trap site. You also use a small amount of crushed willow bark, rubbed over the snare and anchor line, to mask human scent with plant smell. But here's a quirky detail most trappers don't know. At extreme temperatures, scent masking becomes almost unnecessary. Below about -50 Celsius, scent molecules move so slowly through the air that detection ranges drop dramatically. A vole that could smell you from 10 meters away at -20 might not detect anything from 2 meters away at -70. The cold provides natural scent camouflage. This doesn't mean you get sloppy. Habits exist for a reason and weather fluctuates, but it does mean your margin for error increases slightly in the deepest cold. Small mercies. The entire trap setting process, done properly, takes about 5 to 7 minutes per snare. You have 8 snares deployed, which means roughly an hour of work in temperatures that can kill you in minutes if you stop moving or if your gear fails. It's exhausting, dangerous, and absolutely necessary. But there's something else about the trap setting ritual that goes beyond mere mechanics. It's a form of communication with the landscape, a way of saying, I'm still here, still trying, still part of this ecosystem. You're not separate from the environment, some human observer studying nature from outside. You're embedded in it, dependent on it, shaped by it just as surely as the voles and the willows and the larches that explode in the cold. Your grandfather used to say that good trappers don't fight the land, they negotiate with it. You offer respect, careful technique, minimal waste, sustainable harvest, and in return the land offers survival. Not comfort, not luxury, but the bare minimum resources needed to continue existing. It's a harsh negotiation, terms dictated entirely by the stronger party, but it's the only arrangement available. The stock pot bubbles gently on the stove, pulling you back to the present. You lift the lid and peer inside. The water has taken on a cloudy appearance, tiny fat globules rising to the surface, the bones beginning to soften. The smell is stronger now, rich, savory, with that distinctive gamey quality that marks wild meat. Your stomach growls audibly. How long has it been since you ate? The bread and fat this morning, but before that? 2 days? 3? Time blurs when you're rationing heavily. You resist the urge to rush the stock. It needs more time. Another 2 hours at least, preferably 3 or 4, to extract maximum nutrition from the bones. Patience is difficult when you're hungry, but impatience wastes resources. Half-cooked stock is weaker, less nourishing, and you'd need to eat twice as much to get the same caloric value. Better to wait, let the process complete properly. To distract yourself, you turn to the vole pelts. They're still lying on the table where you left them after skinning, small ragged things stiff with cold. Each pelt is maybe 10 centimeters long, covered in dense fur that ranges from brown to gray depending on the individual animal. Not beautiful exactly, but functional. Nature's insulation, proven over millions of years of evolution. You scrape the pelts clean of remaining tissue, a delicate process requiring a dull blade to avoid cutting through the thin hide. The flesh side needs to be completely clean or it'll rot when temperatures rise, ruining the pelt. You work over the waste bucket, scraping methodically, and the small strips of fat and membrane that come off will go into the soup pot later. Waste nothing, waste nothing, waste nothing. The mantra of survival. Clean pelts get stretched, you have a small wooden frame designed exactly for this purpose, and positioned near the stove to dry. Not too close or the hide will cook and become brittle. Not too far or it'll freeze before drying and be useless. There's a zone, maybe a meter from the stove, where temperature is just right for slow drying. You've mapped this zone through trial and error, learning the cabin's thermal geography the way you learn the trapline routes. Stretched and drying, the pelts will be ready in a few days. Then you can work them, softening the hide by working fish oil into the leather side, brushing the fur to remove debris and tangles. For pelts isn't enough for a project yet, but you're accumulating. Last count, you had maybe 30 dried pelts from previous catches. Another 20 or so and you could make a small blanket or a hat liner. Useful things. Things that extend your survival margin slightly. Outside, the darkness is beginning to fracture. You can't see dawn yet. It's still hours away, but there's a sense of the earth rotating toward light, of the sun preparing to make its brief, weak appearance. Or maybe you're imagining it. Time perception gets weird in the perpetual darkness. Sometimes you think it's morning when it's actually evening. Sometimes you lose track of days entirely, uncertain whether it's Tuesday or Saturday, whether the week has passed or the month. You keep a calendar. Marks scratched into a wooden plank near the door, but even that requires discipline to maintain. Miss a day and suddenly you're uncertain whether to make 1 mark or 2 or 3 to catch up. Your grandfather had the same plank, his marks above yours, a record of decades spent in this cabin. Looking at those marks sometimes makes you melancholy. All those days, all that surviving, all that effort just to stay alive. And for what? So you could take over the same struggle, make your own marks, continue the family tradition of freezing and starving in the world's least hospitable location. But then you smell the stock, rich and promising, and you remember why. Because you can. Because you're still here, still capable, still part of an unbroken chain stretching back centuries. Because giving up would mean all those marks, yours and your grandfather's and his grandfather's, meant nothing. You stir the stock pot, watching the bones tumble in the cloudy liquid. The skulls have separated from the vertebrae now, cooking making the joints loose. The tiny rib cages are softening, beginning to fall apart. This is good. This is the gelatin releasing, the minerals dissolving, the transformation of death into sustenance. Another hour, maybe 2. Then you'll add the meat, some salt, perhaps a few dried herbs if you're feeling extravagant. Then you'll eat. Then you'll sleep, warm and fed, and tomorrow you'll wake up and do it all again. The trap setting, the hunting, the cooking, the surviving. One more day in Yakutia. One more mark on the calendar. Waiting in Yakutia is its own form of survival skill, distinct from hunting or firemaking or any of the more active techniques people usually associate with wilderness living. Waiting requires managing your energy expenditure, controlling your psychological state, and accepting that rushing the fundamental processes of life, like bone broth extraction or weather pattern changes, serves no purpose beyond making yourself miserable. You settle onto your sleeping bench, the same one you woke from hours ago, and wrap a single reindeer hide around your shoulders. The cabin has warmed considerably since you fed the stove. The air temperature hovers somewhere around 5 degrees Celsius now, above freezing, which feels positively tropical after the -71 outside. You can breathe without your breath crystallizing. Your face has thawed completely. These small comforts feel extravagant. The stock pot continues its gentle simmer, and you've learned through years of practice to gauge cooking time by sound. Right now, the bubbles are small, irregular, popping quietly against the pot's iron sides. In another hour, as the bones break down further and release their gelatin, the bubbles will become larger, slower, more viscous. The sound will change from a light pop-pop-pop to a thicker blup. Blup, blup. When you hear that deeper sound, the stock will be ready. But for now, waiting. Your mind drifts to the psychological toll of endless winter darkness. This is rarely discussed in survival manuals, which focus almost exclusively on physical challenges, maintaining body temperature, finding food, building shelter. But the mental dimension of extreme cold survival is arguably more dangerous than the physical, because it's insidious, creeping, difficult to recognize until you're already deep in trouble. The darkness here lasts roughly 20 hours a day in deep winter. The sun makes a brief appearance around midday, if you can call the pale disk that barely clears the southern horizon appearance, providing maybe 3 or 4 hours of twilight before sinking again. For the remaining 20 hours, darkness. Complete, absolute, unrelenting darkness. Humans aren't designed for this. Your circadian rhythms expect roughly equal periods of light and dark. Your brain produces melatonin, the sleep hormone, in response to darkness, and serotonin, which regulates mood, in response to light. When darkness dominates 20 hours per day for months on end, the biochemical balance shifts. Melatonin production goes haywire. Serotonin drops. The result is a form of seasonal depression, so common among Yakutian residents that it has its own name. Polarnea quandra, polar fatigue. You've experienced it yourself. The symptoms creep in gradually around late November, early December. First comes the sleep disruption. You're exhausted but can't sleep properly, or you sleep 12 hours and wake up still tired. Then the motivation problems start. Simple tasks that took 5 minutes in summer require intense mental effort in winter. Chopping wood becomes an ordeal not because it's physically harder, but because convincing yourself to start feels impossible. The really insidious part is the emotional flattening. Things that normally bring pleasure. A good meal, a warm fire, the rare clear night with spectacular stars, provoke almost no response. You recognize intellectually that these things are positive, but you don't feel it. It's like experiencing life through a thick pane of frosted glass. Everything is muted, distant, gray. Some people break under polar fatigue. You've heard stories. Trappers who simply stopped maintaining their cabins, stopped eating properly, stopped doing the 100 small tasks necessary for survival. They'd sit and stare at nothing for hours, unable to muster the energy or will to engage with life. Eventually, the cold claimed them, not through any dramatic freezing death, but through gradual system failure brought on by self-neglect. Your grandfather taught you the countermeasures. Structure is critical. You maintain a schedule even when it feels pointless. Wake at the same time. Tend the stove. Check traps. Cook. Sleep. The routine provides a framework that keeps you functional even when motivation is absent. It's like building a scaffold for your psychology, external structure supporting an internal system that's partially collapsed. Physical activity helps too. Movement generates endorphins, provides purpose, keeps your body engaged. The trap checking you did earlier wasn't just about getting food, though that's obviously important. It was also about forcing yourself to move, to do something, to remain active rather than succumbing to the seductive pull of just lying down and waiting for winter to end. Light makes a difference, though it's scarce and precious. You have 2 tallow candles remaining from last year's rendering. You save them for the absolute darkest days, late December and early January, when polar fatigue is worst. On those nights, you'll light a candle and just sit near it, absorbing the warm, flickering light, letting it trick your brain into thinking the world isn't entirely dark. 20 minutes of candlelight can improve your mood for days. It's not much, but it's something. Historians still argue about how pre-industrial Yakutian peoples managed polar fatigue without modern understanding of circadian biology or seasonal affective disorder. Some scholars suggest traditional practices, communal storytelling, ritual activities, carefully maintained social structures, served as unconscious countermeasures. Others argue that acceptance played a role. If everyone in your community experiences the same psychological difficulties, it's normalized rather than pathologized. You simply understand that winter makes you feel terrible, and that's just how winter is. The Saka people have traditional celebrations that cluster in the darkest months. Festivals, gatherings, structured social events that force people out of their individual cabins and into communal spaces. Your grandfather mentioned these, though by his time the traditions had mostly faded, replaced by Soviet agricultural schedules that ignored the psychological needs of polar populations. Whether the modern Saka still maintain these celebrations, you have no idea. You're too isolated out here to participate, even if they do exist. Time measurement changes in the darkness too. Without the sun's regular progression across the sky, your sense of hours and minutes becomes unreliable. Sometimes what feels like 30 minutes is actually 2 hours. Other times, you're convinced hours have passed when it's been barely 20 minutes. You've learned to trust the candle marks you've carved into your tallows. Each mark represents roughly 1 hour of burn time. But even those require lighting candles, which wastes precious resources. Mostly, you measure time by tasks. The stock will take approximately 3 full logs of firewood to cook properly. Each log burns for roughly 45 minutes to an hour. Therefore, stock time equals 3 logs equals about 3 hours. It's circular reasoning, using an unknown to measure another unknown, but it provides enough structure to function. You check the pot now, lifting the lid to peer inside. The water has turned deeply cloudy, almost opaque, with a layer of golden fat pooling on the surface. The bones are softer, fragmenting when you prod them with a wooden spoon. You skim some of the fat into a small bowl. This can be saved for cooking or even for waterproofing seams in your clothing. Nothing wasted. The smell makes your mouth water. Your stomach clenches painfully, reminded of its empty state. You've probably burned through 4,000 calories already today, between maintaining body temperature in the extreme cold and the physical exertion of the trap check, and consumed maybe 600. The deficit is adding up, and your body knows it. But rushing still serves no purpose. You replace the lid and turn away from the pot, forcing your attention elsewhere. The cabin itself becomes your focus. It's small enough that you can see every corner from the sleeping bench, maybe 20 square meters total. One room, the stove in one corner, your sleeping bench in another, a rough table and single chair in the center, storage cupboards and the water bucket along the walls. The ceiling is low, maybe 2 meters at the highest point, which helps with heat retention but makes you feel slightly claustrophobic during the long dark months. The walls tell a history. Your grandfather's handwork is everywhere. The precise chinking between logs, the carefully fitted window frame, the hooks and pegs positioned at ergonomically perfect heights. He built this cabin over a period of 3 years, working mostly in summer when construction was feasible, living in a tent during the building process. The dedication required for that project is staggering. 3 summers of brutal labor, clouds of mosquitoes, isolation, all to create shelter that would enable him to survive winters that kill the unprepared. Why did he do it? You've wondered this often. He was born in a village, had access to community, could have stayed in relatively comfortable circumstances. But something drew him out here, into the deepest wilderness, into self-imposed exile. He never explained fully. The few times you asked as a child, he'd deflect, "Cities make me nervous," or "Too many people asking questions," or simply, "A man needs space to think." You suspect he was running from something, maybe psychological trauma. He lived through the Soviet collectivization period, witnessed terrible things he never discussed. Maybe relationship failures. There are hints of a wife and children he left behind, though details are scarce. Maybe just the call of solitude, a personality type that genuinely thrives in isolation. You'll never know. He died before you thought to ask the right questions, and now the answers are gone. What you inherited, besides the cabin and tools and knowledge, is the same isolation. You came out here at 19, angry at the world, convinced you needed to prove something. 10 years later, you're still here, and you're not entirely sure why anymore. The anger faded. The need to prove anything evaporated. What remains is habit, stubbornness, fear that you've been out here so long you couldn't reintegrate into society even if you wanted to. The psychological isolation might be worse than the physical cold if you let yourself think about it too much. You haven't had a conversation with another human being in 7 months. The last time was June, when a geological survey team passed through, mapping permafrost depths or soil composition or whatever geologists do. They stayed one night, shared some tea, asked if you needed anything from the nearest town. You said no because admitting need felt like admitting failure. 7 months of silence, of talking to yourself occasionally, of hearing only your own voice. You've started narrating your actions out loud sometimes. "Now I'm checking the pot. Time to add more wood." Just to break the quiet. It's a worrying sign. You know this. People who spend too long in isolation start exhibiting strange behaviors, losing social skills, becoming unable to interact normally when contact finally occurs. But what's the alternative? Return to town? Do what exactly? You have no formal education beyond what your grandfather taught you. No job skills applicable to modern life. No social network to reintegrate into. You're a wilderness trapper in an era that has mostly moved past wilderness trapping. The knowledge in your head, how to read vol signs, how to survive -71, how to render fat and tan hides and set snares, is valuable only out here, in circumstances most humans will never encounter and would be smart to avoid. So you stay. Because staying is what you know. Because the cabin is here, the trapline is established, the routine is familiar. Because change is terrifying, and at least the cold is predictable. The stock pot's bubbles are getting larger, slower. You listen carefully. Still the light pop-pop sound, but transitioning. Maybe another 45 minutes until it reaches the thicker blup stage. Close now. You stand and stretch, feeling your joints crack. The cabin is warm enough that you're comfortable in just the wool underlayers. Outside, the temperature has probably risen to a balmy -60 or so. Still deadly, still extreme, but slightly less apocalyptic than the -71 of a few hours ago. Not that you're planning to go back out. You've done your hunting for the day. The rest is waiting and recovery. You add a log to the stove, watching the flames adjust to the new fuel. Fire is hypnotic. You could watch it for hours, mind going blank, time dissolving. Your grandfather spent entire evenings just staring at the fire. You understand why now. It's meditation without the formal structure, a focusing point that allows thoughts to settle. The stock is nearly ready. The meat waits to be added. Soon you'll eat, and the protein will restore some of your strength, and tomorrow you'll wake and do it all again. Waiting, surviving, enduring. One more day in the darkness. One more day closer to spring. The return journey to check your traps in daylight, or what passes for daylight in a Yakutian January, happens around what you estimate is early afternoon. The sky has shifted from absolute black to a deep twilight blue along the southern horizon, suggesting the sun is making its anemic attempt at rising. You won't see the actual sun from your cabin's location. There are hills blocking the southern view, but the increased light is noticeable. Visibility extends to maybe 30 meters now instead of 3. You've already eaten. The stock finished cooking an hour ago, reaching that perfect viscous consistency where it coats the spoon thickly and leaves a gelatin residue when cooled. You added the section vole meat, some salt, and let it simmer for another 20 minutes until the meat was tender. Then you ate. Not all of it, that would be foolish, wasteful, but a generous bowl, maybe a quarter of the total pot. The hot liquid burned, going down in the best possible way, spreading warmth from your stomach outward through your torso, into your limbs, bringing sensation back to parts of you that had felt numb for days. The protein hit differently than carbohydrates. You could feel it almost immediately, restoring something fundamental. Your thoughts became clearer, sharper. Your muscles felt more responsive. Even your mood lifted slightly, the gray fog of polar fatigue thinning just a bit. It's remarkable how quickly malnutrition affects cognition and how quickly proper food reverses the damage. You're still running a massive caloric deficit for the week, but one good meal has stabilized you enough to function properly. Now you're gearing up again. The same laborious process of layering fur and wool, sealing gaps, preparing to face the cold. The temperature outside has indeed risen to around -60 Celsius. Practically tropical. You allow yourself a grim smile at the thought. 6 weeks ago, -60 would have seemed brutally cold. Now it's a relief, a gift, a temperature at which you can work for extended periods without immediate danger of frostbite. The door opens. The cold rushes in, but the shock is less severe than this morning. You step out, close the door, and stand for a moment, letting your eyes adjust to the dim light. The world has transformed. In darkness, everything was formless, void, known only through memory and touch. In twilight, the landscape reveals itself. The rolling snow fields stretching south. The dark line of the forest to the east. The willows marking your trapline visible as black brush strokes against white canvas. It's still monochromatic. Everything rendered in shades of white, gray, and black, but it's visible. You can see. The cold is different in twilight too. It feels less oppressive, less malevolent, though this is probably psychological rather than physical. Cold is cold. -60 will kill you just as efficiently as -71, just slightly less quickly. But being able to see makes you feel more in control, more capable, and that perception matters for morale. You begin walking toward the trapline, following your earlier tracks. The depressions from this morning's journey are still visible. Boot prints filled partially with wind-blown snow but not erased completely. Navigation is easier. You move faster, more confidently, the walking stick probing ahead more from habit than necessity now that you can actually see obstacles. The landscape's details emerge as you walk. Individual willow branches, each one heavy with accumulated frost. Small wind-sculpted drifts where snow has piled against vegetation. The subtle undulations in the terrain that were invisible in darkness but obvious now. And tracks. Animal tracks crisscrossing the snow, evidence of the nocturnal activity that happens in darkness when you're safely inside your cabin. Most of the tracks are small voles, obviously, and probably ermines hunting those voles. There are also some larger prints that might be Arctic hare, though they could be ptarmigan. Both species are winter residents, both turn white for camouflage, and both are nearly impossible to hunt without specialized equipment you don't possess. You've tried. Hares are too fast and wary. Ptarmigan explode from the snow without warning and fly off before you can react. You've resigned yourself to voles as your primary protein source. One track makes you pause. A single line of prints, each one showing 4 toe pads and claw marks, spaced in the distinctive pattern of a running canine. Fox, probably. Not wolf, the prints are too small, and wolves are rare this far north in winter. They follow the reindeer herds, which have migrated south to areas with more accessible forage. But foxes stay, scrounging whatever they can find, including checking trap lines for easy meals. You follow the fox prints with your eyes. They approach your trapline area, parallel it for maybe 20 meters, then veer off toward the forest. The fox was investigating, possibly caught the scent of your bait, but didn't commit to approaching the traps. Smart animal. Cautious. You respect that. In Yakutia, caution keeps you alive whether you're human or fox. The willow line appears ahead, the same dark cluster of vegetation you checked in darkness hours ago. In twilight, it looks less ominous, more mundane. Just bushes. Just potential vole habitat. The psychological weight of darkness does strange things to perception. You approach the first snare carefully, despite knowing it was empty this morning. You reset it, positioned it correctly, but you check anyway because conditions change, animals move, and assumptions kill. The snare is exactly as you left it. Loop properly positioned, bait untouched, horsehair taut and functional. Still empty. You move on. The second snare, the one that held a vole this morning, has been reset with fresh bait. You examine it closely in the improved light. The positioning looks good. The loop height is correct. The bait is frozen solid as expected. Everything is optimal. Whether it will actually catch anything is up to the voles and fortune. Third snare, fourth snare, both empty this morning, both still empty now. This is expected. You're not checking for catches so much as confirming the trapline remains functional, that no disaster has befallen your setup during the hours you were inside cooking and eating and resting. The fifth snare gives you pause. Something has disturbed it. The loop is displaced, pushed to one side, the bait missing. You crouch down, awkward in the heavy furs, and examine the area closely. There are tracks here, small paw prints, definitely vole. And there, scuff marks where something struggled. Blood on the snow, just a few drops, dark red against white. You reconstruct what happened. A vole entered the snare after you checked it this morning. The snare triggered, caught the animal. But then something else arrived. You find the larger prints now, canine, the same fox tracks you saw earlier. The fox smelled trapped vole, approached, and took your catch. The few drops of blood suggest it consumed the vole on sight or carried it off to eat elsewhere. Loss of a vole isn't catastrophic. You have 3 others already processed into stock. But it's frustrating. The fox has learned that your trapline offers easy food. It will likely return, checking the snares regularly, stealing your catches before you can retrieve them. This is a problem. You can't be out here constantly monitoring traps. You need to sleep, to stay warm, to conserve energy. But leaving traps unattended invites theft. Some trappers use fox traps to eliminate the competition. Larger snares designed to catch fox-sized animals, positioned near the vole traps. You've considered this but rejected it for practical reasons. First, you don't particularly want to kill foxes, they're just doing what they need to survive, same as you. Second, fox pelts require extensive processing to be useful, and you barely have energy for your current survival tasks. Third, eliminating one fox just opens territory for another fox to move into. It's a losing battle. The better solution is faster trap checking. Visit the trapline twice a day instead of once. Morning and evening. It's more work, more exposure to the cold, but it minimizes the window during which foxes can steal your catches. You make the decision immediately. Evening checks will now be part of your routine. It'll be in darkness again, which you hate, but necessary. You reset the 5th snare, using the last of your fermented fish bait. You'll need to access your barrel cache soon to replenish the supply. The barrel is buried under snow about 50 meters from the cabin, marked by a tall stake you can find even in darkness. Accessing it requires digging through potentially a meter of accumulated snow, but the fish inside remain preserved, frozen solid, ready to be thawed and used as needed. The remaining snares, 6th, 7th, and 8th, are all intact and functional. No fox interference, no catches waiting. You complete your inspection methodically, confirming each loop is properly positioned, each anchor line is secure, each bait piece is present and correctly placed. The entire trap check takes maybe 20 minutes in the improved visibility. This morning in darkness, it took nearly 40 minutes. The efficiency gain is significant, though it doesn't change the fundamental mathematics of survival. You still need to check traps regularly. You still need to process catches quickly. You still need to maintain equipment constantly. The work never ends. As you prepare to return to the cabin, you notice something you missed in darkness. A ptarmigan track leading from the willow line toward an open area. The 3-toed prints are distinctive and they're fresh, probably from within the last few hours. You follow them with your eyes to where they disappear over a small rise. Ptarmigan are extraordinary winter survivors. They burrow into snow for insulation, creating small caves that trap body heat and protect them from wind. Their feathers grow so densely in winter that they're essentially wearing down sleeping bags. Their feet develop feather coverage too, creating natural snowshoes. And they can survive on a diet of willow buds and frozen berries that would starve most other birds. If you could catch a ptarmigan, it would provide more meat than several voles. The breast meat alone is substantial, rich, fatty from the bird's winter reserves. But catching them is nearly impossible without a gun, which you don't have, or elaborate snare systems you haven't built. They're simply too wary, too fast, too well adapted to avoid ground-based predators like you. Still, you file the information away. Ptarmigan in the area. Might be worth investigating if desperation increases. For now, voles are sufficient. The walk back to the cabin is faster than the outbound journey. You're following your own tracks, the route is familiar, and gravity assists slightly. The cabin sits at marginally lower elevation than the trapline. The landscape glows in the strange twilight, neither day nor night, existing in a liminal state that feels almost dreamlike. You think about the fox while you walk. It's out there somewhere, probably bedded down in a snow burrow or a rock den, digesting your vole, waiting for darkness when it will emerge again to hunt. Its life is parallel to yours. Constant food seeking, constant energy management, constant negotiation with the cold. The difference is the fox doesn't question its existence. It doesn't wonder why it's here or whether there's meaning to the struggle. It simply survives because survival is what organisms do. Maybe that's wisdom. Maybe overthinking existence is a human failing, a consequence of too much brain capacity applied to questions that don't have useful answers. The fox knows what it needs: food, warmth, safety. It pursues those things without existential crisis. You could learn from that. The cabin appears ahead, a dark rectangular shape against the white landscape. Smoke rises from the chimney, thin, nearly invisible, but present. The fire is still burning. The stock pot still contains food. You'll arrive to warmth and sustenance and shelter. These are the victories. Not grand achievements or life milestones, but basic survival metrics. Warmth, food, shelter. Another day navigated successfully. Another night approaching, but you're prepared for it. You reach the door, lift the latch, step inside. The relative warmth envelopes you immediately, and you allow yourself a moment of genuine relief. The trap check is complete. The trap line is functional. The fox is a problem, but a manageable one. You'll adapt, check traps more frequently, minimize losses. This is how survival works in Yakutia. Problems arise constantly. You address them pragmatically. You adapt. You continue. The alternative is giving up, and you're not ready for that. Not yet. Not today. You shed the outer furs and move toward the stove, hands extended toward the warmth. Outside, twilight is already fading back toward darkness. The sun's brief appearance is ending. Night returns. But inside, there's warmth. There's food. There's life. For now, that's enough. The preparation phase begins with assessment. You lift the frozen vole bodies from where you've stored them, just outside the door in a wooden box that serves as a natural freezer, keeping things at ambient temperature, which is to say, frozen absolutely solid. The 3 voles from this morning's catch that you didn't immediately process are rigid. Their small bodies curved in the positions they held when death and cold took them. Ice crystals coat their fur, making them glitter slightly in the cabin's dim light. Thawing must be done carefully. Rapid temperature changes damage meat quality, causing cell walls to rupture and moisture to leach out. You've learned this through trial and error. Early attempts at thawing involved placing frozen meat directly on the hot stove, which resulted in a mess of torn tissue and lost fluids. The correct method is gradual, controlled warming that allows ice crystals to melt slowly without shocking the tissue. You place the frozen voles in a wooden bowl and position the bowl near the stove but not directly against it. The zone you're aiming for maintains a temperature just above freezing, maybe 2 to 5 degrees Celsius. Here, the voles will thaw over the course of several hours, ice crystals melting gradually, tissue fibers relaxing without rupturing. It's the same principle behind thawing any meat, though scaled down to rodent-sized portions. While the voles begin their slow thaw, you turn your attention to the stock pot. The remaining stock, roughly 3/4 of the original batch, sits on the stove, kept warm but not boiling. You ladle some into a smaller pot, maybe a quarter of what remains. This smaller portion will become tonight's soup, enriched with the newly thawed meat. The rest you'll save for tomorrow and possibly the day after, rationing carefully to extend your food supply as far as possible. The economics of survival cooking are brutally simple. Extract maximum nutrition from minimum resources. Every calorie counts. Every bit of fat, protein, and mineral matters. There's no room for waste, no margin for error. The stock in that pot represents days of life. Literally the difference between maintaining strength and sliding into debilitating weakness. You check the thawing voles periodically over the next 2 hours. The process is slower than you'd like. Cold permeates everything in Yakutia, including the air inside your supposedly warm cabin, but gradually the bodies lose their rigidity. You can feel the difference when you touch them, pressing gently against fur and flesh. The initial absolute hardness gives way to a slight yielding, then to actual pliability. When you can bend a leg joint without force, they're ready. The butchering process, done on thawed meat, is significantly easier than working with frozen tissue. Your knife slides through flesh cleanly, separating muscle groups, exposing the small bones, revealing the dark organs inside the body cavity. Each vole yields perhaps 50 to 60 grams of usable meat. Not much, but when you're processing 3 of them, you end up with nearly 180 grams total. Combined with the stock's existing meat, you're looking at maybe 250 grams of protein total. A decent amount. Not a feast, but enough to stave off the worst of the malnutrition. The knife work requires precision and care. Your blade is sharp, you maintain it religiously with a whetstone, knowing that a dull blade is dangerous and inefficient, but working with small animals means small margins. One careless cut and you could slice into your own finger, which in this environment could lead to infection, which could lead to serious complications. Caution is mandatory. You section the meat into small pieces, roughly centimeter cubes. Small pieces cook faster and more evenly, and they're easier to eat in hot soup when your hands are cold and your fine motor control is compromised. The pieces go into a clean bowl, ready to be added to the simmering stock. The bones get special treatment. Vole bones are tiny, fragile things, nothing like the structural bones of larger animals. The long bones of the legs are maybe 4 centimeters in length, thin as matchsticks. The ribs are like small curved needles. The skulls are delicate structures of thin bone and hollow chambers. But these bones still contain marrow, still hold minerals, still have nutritional value to extract. You place the bones directly into the stock pot. They'll simmer there for hours, breaking down further, releasing whatever nutrients they contain. Eventually the bones will soften enough that you could eat them if you wanted, crunch them between your teeth, consume the calcium and phosphorus and other minerals locked in the bone matrix. Some traditional sake recipes actually call for consuming softened bones, treating them as a food source rather than waste. You've done it before in desperate times. The texture is chalky, unpleasant, but calories are calories. The internal organs require judgment calls. Heart and liver are obvious keeps, dense with protein and micronutrients. The hearts are especially small, maybe the size of a pea each, but they're pure muscle tissue. The livers are larger proportionally, dark red and rich. You add these directly to the soup pot. The intestines and stomach contents get discarded. Technically they're edible, you could clean them, prepare them, extract some minimal nutrition, but the effort-to-reward ratio doesn't justify it. In less extreme conditions, perhaps, but right now you're managing energy expenditure carefully. Spending an hour processing intestines for 5 or 10 calories of questionable nutrition doesn't make sense. They go into the waste bucket, which you'll eventually empty outside where foxes and ravens can scavenge what they want. The lungs are a borderline case. They're edible, technically organ meat, but they're mostly air sacs and connective tissue, minimal nutritional density. You hesitate, then add them to the soup anyway. Every little bit helps, and your body needs all the protein it can get. Historians still argue about the origins of bone stock cooking traditions. Did humans independently discover that boiling bones extracts nutrients? Or was the knowledge shared across cultures through some ancient migration or trade route? Archaeological evidence suggests bone-based soups date back at least 20,000 years, with bone fragments showing distinctive boiling marks found at Paleolithic sites across Europe and Asia. The practice is so universal, so fundamental, that it might represent one of humanity's oldest cooking technologies, older than bread, older than fermentation, possibly older than controlled agriculture. Your grandfather had a theory about this. He believed bone stock cooking emerged from desperation rather than innovation. Starving people will try anything, he'd say. Somebody, somewhere, was hungry enough to boil bones to see if anything useful came out. It worked. The knowledge spread. That's how survival wisdom develops, through desperation and experimentation and the memories of those who didn't die trying. You find that logic compelling. The techniques keeping you alive right now: fermented fish bait, horsehair snares, layered fur clothing, bone stock. None of them feel like brilliant innovations. They feel like hard-won discoveries, purchased with the suffering and death of countless forgotten individuals who tried different methods until something worked. The meat goes into the pot now, added to the simmering stock. The liquid has cooled slightly. You've been working with the door occasionally open, allowing cold air to seep in, so you stoke the stove, adding 2 more logs to increase the heat. The stock needs to return to a gentle simmer, enough to cook the fresh meat thoroughly but not so hot that it boils violently and toughens the tissue. Salt comes next. You have maybe 2 kilograms remaining from your summer resupply, stored in a ceramic jar that keeps moisture out. Salt is precious. It preserves food, enhances flavor, and provides sodium your body needs to maintain fluid balance and nerve function. You use it sparingly, adding maybe a teaspoon to the soup pot, enough to season but not waste. There are dried herbs too, though herbs might be generous. You have a small bundle of dried wild thyme that you harvested last summer, recognizable by its tiny leaves and distinctive smell. A few pinches of this go into the pot. The flavor contribution is minimal. Your taste buds are somewhat dulled by chronic malnutrition and cold, but the psychological impact matters. Food that tastes like something, even faintly, is more satisfying than bland nutrition paste. You stir the soup slowly, watching the meat pieces tumble through the cloudy liquid, and the smell intensifies. It's rich now, complex, layered with the deep savory notes of long-cooked bones, the slight gamey quality of wild meat, the herbal undertones from the thyme. Your stomach clenches painfully, saliva flooding your mouth. The body recognizes food, anticipates it, begins preparing the digestive system for incoming nutrition. But patience remains necessary. The fresh meat needs at least 20 minutes of cooking to ensure any potential pathogens are destroyed. You don't want to risk food poisoning out here alone without access to medical care. Vomiting and diarrhea in extreme cold, when you're already running a caloric deficit, could be fatal. The lost fluids and nutrients might push you past the point of recovery. So you wait, stirring occasionally, maintaining the heat, watching the meat cook through. The small pieces begin to lose their raw pink color, turning grayish-brown as the proteins denature. The liquid bubbles gently, steam rising in wisps, carrying the smell throughout the cabin. It's almost torture, being this close to food and not eating immediately, but discipline is survival. You use the waiting time to prepare your eating setup. A clean bowl, you only have 2, so clean means not actively filthy, gets positioned on the table. A wooden spoon, carved by your grandfather decades ago, smooth from years of use. A chunk of the remaining bread, hard as a stone but edible when dipped in hot soup. A cup of water, melted from clean snow, for drinking alongside the meal. The cabin is warm now, maybe 8 degrees Celsius, which feels almost luxurious. You've stripped down to a single layer of wool clothing, and you're actually comfortable. Outside, the darkness has returned completely, the brief twilight has faded, and the temperature is probably back down to -65 or worse. But inside is warmth, light from the stove's glow, and the promise of hot food minutes away. Finally, 25 minutes after adding the fresh meat, you judge the soup ready. The meat is cooked through, the stock is hot and aromatic, the bones have simmered long enough to be soft. You ladle a generous portion into your bowl, making sure to capture some of the meat pieces, some of the softened bones, plenty of the golden broth. The first spoonful burns your tongue. You don't care. The heat, the flavor, the sensation of actual food entering your system. It's overwhelming. You force yourself to eat slowly, chewing thoroughly, allowing your stomach to adjust. Eating too fast after a period of rationing can cause nausea, cramping, even vomiting. Your digestive system needs time to remember how to process real food. The meat is tender, falling apart easily. The stock is rich, coating your mouth and throat with gelatin and fat. The bread, dipped in the hot liquid, softens enough to chew without breaking teeth. You eat methodically, savoring each bite, letting the warmth spread through your body from the inside out. Halfway through the bowl, you pause. Your stomach feels full, artificially full, probably, because 250 grams of food isn't actually enough to satisfy true hunger, but you recognize the signal. Your body is telling you to stop, to let the initial portion digest before adding more. You listen, setting the spoon down, pushing the bowl slightly away. The remaining soup sits in the pot on the stove, staying warm. You'll have more later, before sleep, and again tomorrow morning. The rationing continues, it has to, but for this moment, right now, you're fed. You're warm. You're safe. Outside, the wind picks up slightly, making the cabin walls creak. Inside, the stove ticks as metal expands and contracts. You sit at the table, hands wrapped around the warm bowl, and allow yourself a moment of something approaching contentment. This is what survival tastes like. Not victory, not triumph, just another day successfully navigated. Another meal earned through cold and effort and careful planning. Another night you won't go to bed hungry. In Yakutia, that's enough. The warm reward settles into your bones with a satisfaction that transcends mere nutrition. You finish the second, smaller bowl of soup an hour after the first, your stomach now genuinely full for the first time in perhaps a week. The sensation is almost uncomfortable. Your body has adjusted to operating on minimal fuel, and suddenly having adequate calories creates a pleasant heaviness, a drowsiness that signals safety, abundance, the permission to rest. You lean back in the chair, hands still cupped around the empty bowl, absorbing residual warmth through your palms. The stock pot on the stove holds maybe 2 more servings, enough for tomorrow morning and perhaps a midday meal if you're careful. This calculation, constant, automatic, runs in the background of your mind like a survival algorithm. Food remaining equals days of life equals margin for error equals psychological security. The stove radiates heat steadily, the cabin maintaining a stable temperature around 6 or 7 degrees Celsius. Outside, the wind has intensified slightly. You can hear it whistling around the corners of the structure, testing the chinking between logs, looking for gaps to exploit. But your grandfather built well. The walls hold. The warmth stays in. You remain protected from the lethal cold prowling just beyond the wooden barriers. Your body responds to the food in ways beyond mere fullness. You can feel your thinking becoming clearer, sharper, as if a fog has lifted from your cognition. This is protein feeding your brain, glucose reaching neurons that have been operating on inadequate fuel. Your hands are steadier too. You notice this when you set the bowl down, the movement controlled and precise rather than the slight tremor that's been your baseline for days. There's a scholarly debate among nutritionists and survival researchers about how quickly the human body can recover from malnutrition. Some studies suggest that a single adequate meal can restore cognitive function within hours, while physical recovery, rebuilding muscle mass, replenishing fat stores, takes weeks or months. You don't know the academic answer, but you know the experiential truth. You feel substantially better now than you did 6 hours ago, and the difference is entirely attributable to 4 small voles transformed into stock. The evening routine begins almost unconsciously. You've done this so many times that your body moves through the steps without requiring conscious direction. First, secure the food. The remaining soup gets transferred to a smaller container, a ceramic jar with a lid, that you'll place just outside the door where it will freeze solid overnight and remain preserved. In the morning, you'll bring it back in, thaw it near the stove, have it ready for breakfast. The stock pot gets cleaned using snow melted in a smaller pan. You don't waste the soup remnants, scraping every bit into your stomach first, and then positioned near the stove to dry. Moisture left in cookware will freeze, expand, and potentially crack the iron. Everything must be dried thoroughly. The cabin itself gets tidied. The few dishes go on their shelf. The cutting board gets scraped clean and stored. The waste bucket, containing the vole intestines and other scraps, needs to be emptied outside before you sleep, because leaving organic waste inside the cabin attracts mice, and while you'll eat voles without complaint, you draw the line at sharing your living space with rodents. It's irrational, perhaps, but everyone needs boundaries. You pull on the outer fur coat for the brief excursion to empty waste. The door opens. The cold hits like a physical wall. The temperature has indeed dropped, probably back to -70 or close to it. You move quickly. Dump the waste bucket contents about 30 meters from the cabin, where scavengers can find it, but won't associate the food source with your dwelling, and hurry back inside. The instant you're back in the cabin, door secured, you can feel your body heat bleeding away from that brief exposure. Maybe 90 seconds outside, and already your face is numb, your fingers aching inside the mittens. The cold doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care that you just ate well, that you're feeling better, that you've had a successful day. It simply exists, waiting for mistakes, ready to kill at the first opportunity. You shed the outer coat and move back to the stove. The night is settling in fully now, probably around 8 p.m., though time is approximate at best. You've been awake since 4 this morning, roughly 16 hours of consciousness, which is enough. Sleep will restore you further, allow the food to be fully processed, give your body time to repair and rebuild. But there's a ritual to complete first, something you've done every night for the past 10 years, inherited from your grandfather who did it for 40 years before you. The calendar mark. You move to the plank near the door. A flat piece of larch, smoothed and worn, covered in scratched lines, and use the knife to carve a single new mark. A vertical line, thin but definite, representing today. January 31st, 2026, assuming your count is accurate. One more day survived. One more mark added to the thousands already recorded. Looking at the marks sometimes fills you with melancholy. All those days, all that effort, all those small victories and narrow escapes compressed into simple scratches on wood. But tonight, fed and warm and genuinely comfortable for the first time in recent memory, you feel something different. Not quite pride, that seems too grand, but perhaps satisfaction. You're still here. You're still making marks. The struggle continues, but so do you. The sleeping bench calls to you. You've prepared it while the soup was cooling, piling the reindeer hides into a nest of warmth, positioning them so you can burrow deep and retain body heat throughout the night. The cabin will cool as you sleep. The stove will burn down to coals. The temperature will drop to near freezing or below, but under the hides you'll remain warm enough. You add several logs to the stove, banking the fire for the night. Too much fuel and it'll burn too hot, wasting wood and potentially creating a fire hazard. Too little and the fire will die completely, leaving you to wake in a frozen cabin. The right amount, 3 logs, carefully positioned to burn slowly, will keep coals alive until morning while providing enough heat to prevent the interior temperature from dropping below -10 or so. The final preparation. Removing your outer wool layers and sleeping in just the innermost clothing. This seems counterintuitive. Shouldn't you wear everything to stay warm? But it's actually more efficient. The reindeer hides trap and reflect body heat. If you're wearing too many layers, you'll overheat, sweat, and the moisture will dampen the furs, reducing their insulating properties. Better to wear minimal clothing and let the hides do their job. You crawl under the pile of furs, arranging them over and around your body, creating a cocoon. The immediate warmth is remarkable. Your body heat, trapped and reflected by the hollow reindeer hairs, creates a microclimate that rapidly reaches perhaps 15 or 20 degrees Celsius. It's like being in a sleeping bag designed by millions of years of evolution. You lie there, feeling the day's tension draining from your muscles. The protein from dinner is being broken down, amino acids being shuttled to cells throughout your body, rebuilding tissue damaged by cold and stress. The fats are being stored, precious energy reserves that will help you maintain body temperature tomorrow. The minerals from the bones, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, are being absorbed, strengthening your own skeletal system. Your mind drifts. You think about the fox that stole your vole and the decision to check traps twice daily. You think about the remaining winter, probably another 8 to 10 weeks of extreme cold before temperatures start their slow climb towards something survivable. You think about the stock pot with 2 more meals inside it. You think about your grandfather, and the marks on the calendar, and the unbroken chain of survival stretching backward through time. There's something profound you realize about continuity. You're living almost exactly as your grandfather lived, using the same techniques, facing the same challenges, achieving the same modest victories. And he was living as his grandfather lived before him. The modern world exists somewhere, cities with electricity and heated buildings and grocery stores, but it might as well be on another planet. Here, in this cabin, in this frozen wilderness, time has essentially stopped. The essential struggle remains unchanged. Find food, stay warm, survive another day. Is this meaningful? Does it matter? You've asked yourself these questions thousands of times over the years, and you still don't have satisfying answers. By most metrics of modern success, you're failing spectacularly. You're alone, poor, barely surviving, contributing nothing to society or culture or human progress. You could die tomorrow and probably no one would know for months, maybe years. But then again, you're alive. You're functioning in an environment that would kill most humans within hours. You've mastered skills that are rare, valuable in specific contexts, representative of thousands of years of accumulated wisdom. You're a living connection to ancestral survival techniques, a repository of knowledge that's vanishing as the modern world homogenizes human experience. Maybe that's enough. Maybe meaning doesn't require grand significance. Maybe it's enough to simply persist, to maintain the chain, to add your marks to the calendar alongside your grandfather's and honor the struggle through continuation. The stove ticks softly as the metal cools and contracts. Outside, something cracks in the forest. Another tree exploding from the cold. The wind continues its probing assault on the cabin walls, finding no weakness, eventually moving on. You're safe. You're warm. You're fed. Sleep approaches like a gentle tide, pulling you down into darkness. Your breathing slows, deepens. Your heartbeat steadies. The hypervigilance that characterizes waking hours in a survival situation begins to release, trusting the cabin, the fire, the furs to maintain life while consciousness fades. Tomorrow will bring new challenges. The trapline will need checking again. The woodpile will be slightly smaller. The food supply will deplete by another meal. The cold will continue its relentless siege. But tomorrow is tomorrow's problem. Right now, in this moment, everything necessary for life is present. Your last conscious thought is a kind of gratitude, not directed at anything specific, just a general appreciation for the improbable fact of continued existence. For voles, one pot of stock, enough warmth to sleep safely. In the grand cosmic scheme, these are infinitesimal victories, but they're yours, earned through effort and skill and stubborn refusal to surrender to the cold. The darkness takes you gently, pulling you into sleep. Your breathing becomes rhythmic, automatic. Your body begins its nightly maintenance, repairing, rebuilding, preparing for the next day's struggle. The fire burns down to coals, glowing red in the darkness. The cabin creaks and settles. Outside, the stars will slowly overhead, indifferent and eternal, and you sleep, warm, fed, alive. One more day survived in Yakutia. One more night passed in safety. One more morning waiting just beyond the darkness. The calendar holds one more mark. The chain continues. The story goes on. The night deepens around you, the kind of profound darkness that exists only in places far from human civilization. The temperature outside plummets toward -75, maybe lower, as heat radiates away from the frozen earth into the clear winter sky. But here, in your cocoon of reindeer fur, you're protected. Your breathing is soft, regular, the breath of someone who has done hard physical work and eaten well and can finally rest without anxiety. The stove's coals pulse gently, a slow heartbeat of warmth keeping the cabin from freezing entirely. The cabin itself is a small island of life in an ocean of deadly cold. But it holds. The walls your grandfather built remain solid. The chinking keeps the wind out. The roof bears the weight of accumulated snow without complaint. Dreams come, fragmentary and strange. You walk through summer landscapes, green and warm, impossibly distant from your current reality. You speak with your grandfather, though he's been dead 5 years. He nods approval at something, your trap-setting technique, perhaps, or your decision to ration the stock properly. The dream shifts. You're a child again, learning to braid horsehair, your small fingers clumsy but determined. Your grandfather's hands guide yours, patient and sure. The dreams fade. Deep sleep takes over, dreamless and restorative. Your body works through the night, processing nutrition, regulating temperature, maintaining the complex systems that define life. Your immune system patrols for threats. Your digestive system extracts every possible nutrient from the vole stock. Your muscular system begins the slow process of rebuilding tissue damaged by cold and exertion. Outside, the night continues its cold vigil. The stars turn slowly above. The wind rises and falls. The forest makes its periodic explosive sounds as trees surrender to the expanding ice within their trunks. A fox moves through the darkness, perhaps the same one that stole your vole, hunting, surviving, playing its role in the ecosystem of frozen things. But you are unaware of all this, lost in sleep's protective embrace. The night passes. The earth turns. Dawn approaches, inevitable and patient. You are warm. You are safe. You are alive. And in Yakutia, in the deepest cold, in the longest darkness, that is everything. Sleep well, survivor. Tomorrow will come with its challenges and necessities, but tonight you rest. Tonight you've earned your peace. The fire burns low. The furs hold their warmth. Your breathing continues, soft and steady. Sweet dreams.